The applause echoed across the auditorium, but I couldn't move. My name was being called on stage, the valedictorian of our graduating class, and yet I remained frozen in my seat because in that moment, all I could hear was my father's voice from 4 years ago. He's the real future of this family. You'll figure out life on your own. That day, he handed my entire college fund to my older brother, Jared. Not out of necessity. No, he did it with pride. He looked me in the eye and told me to be smart like your brother if you want to be taken seriously. I didn't argue. I didn't scream. I simply packed my bag, picked up a part-time job at a coffee shop, and enrolled in community college with whatever scholarships I could earn from academic merit. That was 4 years ago. 4 years of silence, grit, and pretending it didn't sting every time I saw Jared's fancy Instagram stories of frat parties and spring break trips funded by the money that was supposed to be mine. But now, here I was, top of my class, scholarship offers lined up, and the guest list for my graduation ceremony missing 2 names, my dad and Jared. They had RSVP'd, regretfully cannot attend, not even bothering to make up an excuse. Still, I stood when they called my name, walked to that stage with every step echoing the silence they left behind. I held the mic in shaky hands, looked out over the sea of families cheering for their kids, and forced a smile. This speech isn't just about perseverance, I said, voice steadying. It's about grace. Sometimes, the people who doubt you the most are the ones you once admired most. But that's okay, because their absence taught you presence. Their silence taught you voice. And their betrayal, it taught you strength. The audience fell quiet. Some clapped. A few parents even wiped tears. But none of them knew what I knew. Tomorrow was the will reading. And I had a sealed envelope in my purse from my late grandfather that I hadn't opened yet. The same envelope the family lawyer had slid into my hand 2 days before and said, he wanted you to read this privately. But tomorrow, you'll understand why. Something told me it was going to change everything. But not just for me, for them, too. I didn't open the envelope that night. I could have. God knows I stared at it long enough. The off-white paper was slightly yellowed, sealed in red wax with the initials CM, my grandfather's name, Charles Montgomery. The man who, unlike my dad, never once made me feel like an afterthought. The man who showed up to every piano recital, every science fair, every little thing my father found beneath his time. But even my grandfather hadn't said much the last year. Not since the illness took over. And when he passed 3 weeks ago, my father and brother took control of everything, acting like heirs of some dynasty. Don't worry about tomorrow, my brother Jared had said with that smug smile, the kind that always made me feel like I was 12 again. Dad says everything's already taken care of. You'll be fine. Fine. I didn't even reply. They expected me to show up at the lawyer's office, sit quietly, accept whatever scraps were left, maybe a framed photo or some heirloom necklace, and disappear again. That was always the role they carved out for me. But they didn't know I had something. Something in my purse that felt heavier than it looked. The next morning, I sat in the back corner of the law firm's waiting area, knees bouncing under my skirt. Across from me sat my father in a tailored gray suit, legs crossed like he owned the building. Jared was scrolling through his phone, Armani sunglasses pushed up into his styled hair like a movie star. Not once did they glance my way. The receptionist called us in, and the 3 of us walked into the conference room with polished mahogany walls and a long table set with water glasses. The family lawyer, Mr. Levins, was already seated, files stacked beside him. He didn't smile, didn't offer a handshake. Just nodded once and said, "We'll begin." He read through the legal formalities first, the estate's debts, the trust allocations, the property value. Jared looked like he'd won the lottery, with every number. My father didn't even blink, as if he'd memorized it all. Then came the moment. "And now," Mr. Levin said, his voice lowering, "a personal letter, addressed by Mr. Montgomery to Ms. Amelia Grace Cartwright, to be opened publicly at the reading of his will, as per his instructions." My father's brows furrowed. Jared actually snorted. "Seriously," he whispered. "Grandpa left her a letter?" I reached into my bag. The envelope was warm now. Or maybe my hands were just cold. Either way, I broke the wax seal. Inside was a handwritten letter. I started reading aloud. To my dearest Amelia, by the time you read this, I will have left this world. But I hope not your heart. I watched you grow with grace in a house where you were often treated like you didn't belong. And that is my greatest regret, remaining silent when I should have defended you louder. You are the reason I rewrote my will. I want this family to hear every word of this next part, so speak clearly, my girl. I looked up. My father's jaw had tensed. Jared leaned forward, suddenly less smug. I continued. You will inherit the farmhouse. The one where we used to watch the stars. It's yours. But more than that, you will also inherit my stake, 85%, in Cartwright Financial Holdings. Your father knows this company well. He helped me build it. He also assumed, foolishly, that he would inherit it. He won't, because he gambled with more than money. He gambled with people. And I do not reward that. The shares are yours, Amelia. Use them how you see fit. Build, protect, or burn it down and rebuild better. But whatever you do, know that you earned every bit of it. I love you. Always. Grandpa. Silence. Jared's sunglasses hit the floor. My father stood abruptly. This is a joke. But Mr. Levins simply slid the official documents across the table and said, It's not. Her name is already on the deeds. And for the first time in years, I looked my father in the eye and said, calmly, You were right. Jared is the future you wanted. But I'm the one Grandpa trusted with the legacy. The silence in the room thickened. My father's mouth opened and closed, but no words came out. Jared had gone pale, so pale it looked like all the blood had drained from his carefully tanned face. The smugness? Gone. And me? I didn't smile. I didn't gloat. I just sat there, still holding the letter, letting it tremble slightly in my hands, because that moment, as clean and quiet as it was, had been boiling inside me for years. But I hadn't known it would come like this. Mr. Levins cleared his throat gently, as if to give my father a polite exit from denial. It's all been notarized. The transfer of ownership and controlling shares of Cartwright Financial Holdings has already been filed. Amelia officially holds majority control as of this morning. The words hit like thunder in a still room. Dad finally spoke, his voice cracking. My father would never do this to me. Levins adjusted his glasses and replied without flinching, Your father trusted people who earned it. That trust had consequences, for better or worse. Jared scoffed and turned to me. What are you even going to do with it? You work at a coffee shop, Amy. I looked him dead in the eye and said softly, Not anymore. After the will reading, I walked out first. The sun outside was blinding, too warm for spring. It felt like a different world from the one I had walked into only 30 minutes earlier. I stepped onto the sidewalk, the letter still in my hand, and just stood there for a second. Cars passed. People walked. Life moved on. But I couldn't, not yet. A few minutes later, Mr. Levins joined me. He didn't say much, just handed me a small folder and said, There's a private note from him in there. One he didn't want read aloud. I nodded. Thank you. He paused. He loved you, you know. He used to talk about how you reminded him of your grandmother. Same fire. Same patience. Same spine. I didn't respond. I couldn't. My throat had closed up. That night, I sat on the porch of the farmhouse, the one Grandpa left me. It smelled like old cedar and lilacs, exactly like I remembered. Nothing fancy. No marble countertops. No ocean views. Just a small swing that creaked with the breeze and a sky wide enough to swallow every thought. I opened the second letter in the folder. Amelia, if you're reading this here, it means you came home. Not the house, home. This place. This porch. This air. It's all part of who you are. Don't let the noise of the world make you forget what quiet feels like. The company is yours now. But don't let it consume you. Build something better. Kinder. Wiser. Be the kind of leader your father never became. You're not just the future of this family. You're the family. Love. Grandpa. I wiped my eyes and read it again. And for the first time in my life, I felt seen, not as the second choice, not as the forgotten sibling, not as the girl who made do, but as the one who stayed kind when it was easier to grow bitter. That night, I didn't plot revenge. I planned a beginning. The next morning, the world woke up the same, but I didn't. I stood in the kitchen of the old farmhouse, staring at the faded tiles I used to dance barefoot across when I was 10, my hands wrapped around a chipped mug Grandpa had never let anyone throw away. The smell of black coffee filled the space, but my thoughts were elsewhere. Circling around the storm I had quietly walked through all these years. I had no intention of tearing anyone down. Not my father. Not Jared. That wasn't the point. That was their way. Pride, control, posturing. But me? I'd learned something powerful in silence. Kindness, when chosen again and again by someone with every right to be bitter, becomes something else. It becomes strength. I wasn't just going to be a CEO. I was going to be a different kind of leader. By noon, I was seated inside the headquarters of Cartwright Financial Holdings. And the looks I received when I walked in, well, they said it all. A few employees offered uncertain smiles, clearly not sure how to address the new boss. Some whispered, one even asked if I was here for an interview. But I walked through the office with the calm of someone who had nothing left to prove. At the top floor, I stood outside the glass office that used to belong to my grandfather, and now belonged to me. Inside was the acting interim CEO, Thomas Maddox, a tall, polished man in his late 50s with silver temples and a sharp gaze. He stood when I entered. "Miss Cartwright," he said formally, though his expression held curiosity. "We've been expecting you." I extended a hand. "Please call me Amelia." He shook it firmly. "Your grandfather spoke highly of you. Did he also tell you I'd be taking over?" Maddox nodded. "He mentioned it in his final directive. I'll admit, it surprised the board. But after reading your academic record and scholarship achievements, I'm inclined to believe the decision was well placed." I exhaled, grateful not to be met with open condescension. Still, I could sense skepticism behind the politeness. A girl in her early 20s, no corporate experience, walking into an empire? That wasn't exactly a fairy tale ending. But I had a plan. "Mr. Maddox," I said, sitting across from him, "I'm not here to pretend I know everything. I don't. But I know people. And I know how it feels to be overlooked, unheard, and unseen. This company will change. From the inside out." He tilted his head. "You're suggesting a restructuring?" "I'm suggesting a rehumanizing," I replied softly. "We start listening to the lowest paid employees. We implement mental health support. We offer paid internship opportunities for girls from underfunded communities. And we build bridges, not walls." There was a long pause. Then, slowly, a smile crept onto his face. "Well," he said, "that would certainly shake up our quarterly reports." I returned the smile. "Then let's shake them up." Over the next few days, I dove in, not with arrogance, but with quiet fire. I stayed late learning financial breakdowns, sat in meetings just to listen, took notes during every department head discussion. I shadowed janitors and assistants, asked receptionists what changes they would make. And slowly, the tone changed. People started greeting me with genuine warmth, not forced formality. I was no longer the mystery girl from the will. I was becoming the heart of the place. It was a week later when I ran into my brother. I was coming out of a lunch meeting when I saw him in the lobby, arguing with a security desk. He looked different now, tired, confused, lost in the very building he used to assume he'd control. He spotted me and his mouth curled into a half smile. "Nice office. Fancy title." I didn't respond. I just waited. He walked up to me, lowering his voice. "You know this is insane, right? You're not built for this world. You're gonna crash." I met his eyes, calm and steady. "You think I've made it this far without knowing how to survive?" Jared laughed dryly. "So, what? This is revenge?" I shook my head. "No. If it were, you wouldn't be standing here." He blinked. "You're not throwing me out?" "No," I said simply. "But I'm not handing you power either. You'll earn your place if you want one." There was a beat of silence. "You've changed," he muttered. "No," I replied. "You're just finally seeing me." That night, I sat in my office alone. The moonlight spilled in through the tall windows, casting soft light on the letter now framed behind my desk, the one Grandpa wrote me. I reread the last line, mouthing the words silently. "Be the kind of leader your father never became." And maybe, just maybe, I was. 3 months passed. In those 3 months, everything changed, and yet, in some strange way, everything also found its rightful place. Cartwright Financial Holdings, once a company built on legacy and rigid structure, had become something new. Not because I walked in with a grand plan or a booming voice, but because I walked in with intention, with empathy, and with something none of the men before me ever seemed to value: humility. I implemented every change I had promised. The internship program? Launched. The applications overflowed with stories from young girls who never believed a place like Cartwright would have room for them. One of them, a shy 17-year-old named Kayla, wore the exact same thrift store blazer I wore to my first community college interview. The employees? They weren't just clocking in anymore. There was laughter in the lunchroom, birthday cards on desks, anonymous suggestions in the box that were actually being read and implemented. The profit margins didn't collapse. They grew. Because people perform better when they feel seen. My father hadn't spoken to me directly since the will reading. I'd seen him once, at a gala I was asked to speak at, where he stood near the exit, watching from a distance. When our eyes met, he didn't scowl. He didn't smirk. He simply nodded once. A silent gesture. Perhaps apology. Perhaps recognition. And maybe that was all I needed. But one evening, weeks later, the doorbell rang at the farmhouse. It was Jared. In jeans and a hoodie, no sunglasses, no cocky smirk. Just him. My brother. "Can I come in?" he asked. I stepped aside. He walked slowly, as if the house brought back more memories than he expected. The creaky floorboards, the photo of Grandpa and me fishing, the scent of old wood and peace. "I've been applying for jobs," he said quietly, sitting on the couch. "No one's biting." I sat beside him, not saying a word. "I was stupid," he whispered. "Spoiled. I thought. Dad always said the company was mine, you know? Like it was some kind of birthright." "I know," I replied. He turned to me, his voice thick. "But I never hated you. I just didn't see you. And now I realize how blind that was." My chest tightened. It hurt. A lot. "I know." We sat in silence for a long time. No need to explain every wound. No need to dig them up. "I don't want a handout," he said at last. "But if you'd ever consider, maybe I could start fresh. Prove I can be useful, even if it's just in the mailroom." I smiled gently. "We don't have a mailroom anymore." He chuckled, wiping his face. "Figures. But we do have a mentorship program. And I know someone who might take a chance on a guy trying to do better." His eyes met mine, stunned. "You do that?" "Grandpa believed in second chances," I said. "And I do, too. But only if you take it seriously." He nodded, and for the first time in our lives, there was no competition in his eyes. Just something soft. Something real. The next day, I walked through the company's doors with Jared beside me. Not as a symbol of victory, but as a reminder that kindness isn't weakness. That forgiveness isn't forgetting. And that power, when held with grace, can transform more than just a company. It can transform people. 6 months later, we hosted the first ever Voices of the Future Summit, inviting young women from all over the country to speak, dream, and connect with leaders across industries. I stood on stage, no longer the forgotten daughter or the girl who was told to stay in the background. I was Amelia Cartwright, the CEO, the granddaughter, the leader, the legacy. As I finished my speech and stepped down from the stage, a woman in the audience raised her hand and asked, "What do you think your grandfather would say if he could see all this today?" I smiled, heart full, and answered simply. He'd say, "It was always supposed to be you." And for the first time in my life, I finally believed that.